In this video, we will continue exploring about the flash with Mr. Sarvanan Janakarajan. He is going to talk to us about normal sync flash, high-speed sync flash and flash composition. He is also going to show us various equipment that is used with the flash and how to use them.
Before we continue further, we need to understand how the shutter functions in a camera so that we can then sync it with the flash. Now, the shutter of a camera, as soon as you press the shutter button, it has two curtains. There is a front curtain and the rear curtain before the sensor. Now, this first action is that the rear curtain will open and then the front curtain will start opening. Now, the gap between the rear and the front curtain opening is where the exposure begins. And as the rear curtain starts closing and the exposure starts ending. As soon as the front curtain closes, the exposure ends. So the gap between these two curtains opening and closing is when the image is captured. So why this is important is because this is how the flash will also get synchronized with your shutter. So in a normal sync, or what we call as a slow sync, if you see both the curtains are closed, the flash is off. Then the front curtain starts going down and the flash is still off. Then the sensor is completely opened, the flash then triggers, then the rear curtain starts coming down and rear curtain is completely closed. So now the flash has only fired once, and that is when both the curtains are open. So this is how a good exposure is possible with a flash. The problem with this kind of exposure is that the flash duration is much shorter than the time it takes for shutter to move across the image sensor. So you have to ensure that the flash fires exactly when both the curtains are open. And even if you miss the speed by even a fraction of a second, then you will start getting black part in your images. For example, if the shutter speed is faster than the flash exposure, it will start overlapping the picture. That is why in most of the cameras, in a normal sync, the flash speed allowed is only 1/200 or 1/250th of a second. Because if the speed is more, then your flash will start synchronizing with the rear curtain closing, and then you can see that the black part of the image, the flash happening on the image, and this is where you will have a problem in higher speed syncs. So the camera by itself will restrict your speed 1/200 or 1/250 depending on the models. The normal sync flash is used in the indoors usually because you don't have very fast action happening there. So usually you can see them in the portraits or studios or fashion shoots and wedding photography, where more or less the subject is still or not very fast moving. The high speed sync flashes are the newer versions and usually the TTL flashes. These flashes have the ability to fire at more than 1/250th of a second. Now these are used in especially bird photography, like when you're clicking fast birds and small birds like hummingbirds, etc. To freeze their flights, you need a very, very high speed, a speed up to 1/8000th of a second. Now, how do you use high-speed flash in TTL mode? The high-speed sync flash is not a single exposure of flash. It is multiple flashes which happen, and right from the time the front curtain goes down to the time when the rear curtain closes. So it is multiple bursts of flash, but they are so fast that to a naked eye it looks like one single flash. The high sync flash is used in wildlife photography or in action photography, and they are used because the multiple bursts of the flash will help capture the action, and only a sliver of exposure moves across the image sensor. So even at a very high speed you will not get the blacking of the image as it happened in the slow speed. So a high sync flash is a definite requirement for a wildlife or a action photography if you are using flash. Setting up high sync setting is very similar to what we did for ETTL. We have to go to the flash control, and in external flash control setting we have the menu to set up the high sync. It's denoted by an H with a lightning symbol. Now, this is a very important subject which we need to understand, the difference between power versus compensation. Power of a flash can be from the 100% power, which is 1 by 1, or it can go up to a fraction of 128th of the total power. So this is how the power of a flash can be reduced or increased, and it reduces or increases in a stop. I'm sure you understand what a stop is. A stop is when you cut the light by half or increase the light by double. So for every stop cut, there is a drop in power, or every stop increase, there is an increase in power. This happens in manual mode. Whereas in a TTL mode, since the camera is going to tell what the power of the flash has to be, what you can control is, you can control, like in a camera, you can control the exposure compensation. So a flash will have an exposure compensation which goes from -3 going to 0, and from 0 to +3. So as you go plus, it means you're increasing the exposure compensation, you're making the picture brighter. As you're going minus, it means you're making the picture darker. It is very similar to your camera exposure compensation. The relationship between an exposure compensation and a power of flash is roughly shown here. It is not the exact numbers, but more or less, if you see that, if you take at the stop level, you can see that for every increase in exposure compensation or in increase in stop, the power will double, or exposure compensation go up by one stop. And why do we need to understand this? This is because if you're using in manual mode, when you use a flash, you will see that it will either ask you to adjust the power of the flash, or if you're using it in TTL mode, you can adjust the power by using exposure compensation. So in a TTL mode, you can't look at a power of flash, and in a manual mode, you can't look at exposure compensation of a flash. So you need to understand how to control the output of a flash in manual mode and in a TTL mode. In this session, we saw various flashes and the various types of flashes and their uses. So let me show you some flash types. This is the alkaline battery flash. This is a very slow sync flash, as we discussed in the presentation. Here you can put the alkaline batteries, which are the normal AA batteries, and you can put 4 here, as you can see. The issue with this flash is that it has a very long recycle time. So when you use it in wildlife or in action, you will not be able to get all the shots with flash, because it will take a lot of time to recycle. This is good for wedding photography or for your indoor family functions, etc. In case you want to use it with a faster recycle time, then you'll have to buy a separate battery pack, and it's a lot of gear which you'll have to go with this. So instead of that, now we have lithium-ion battery flashes. These are lithium-ion batteries. They are very similar to the batteries which come for your camera. So here you have to charge these batteries and then just put them in the flash, and this gives you a very fast recycle time. Also, the flash burst is faster. For example, I have put this flash onto the camera, and when I use this flash, you can see that how fast the flash goes on. It syncs at more than 1/200 seconds, and also on a TTL mode, it can match the speed of your camera's burst, what is called as FPS, frames per second. It can match the camera's frames per second. So a lithium ion flash is what is used in wildlife. Now, apart from flash, what we use in wildlife to throw the power of flash to a longer distance is, there are two gadgets we use. One of these is called as the better beamer. This is how it looks. This is how it is put on the flash. Now, it has two arms, two plastic arms to it, and then you have a flexible lens. They are all joined together using a Velcro strip, and you can then put it on the flash like this, and it is bound by a strip of Velcro, and then when you click, the flashlight goes through the lens, and the distance it reaches is far than what it would have reached without this. Now, in this also, there's a problem that the top and bottom are open. So a quick fix is to put, a small towel or a cloth on this, but the issue is that it's not feasible in all the places. So instead of better beamer, we can use something called as a mega mod. Now, mega mod comes like this. You can easily, it's a funnel type of thing made of rubber. It has a lens at one end, and the other end has magnets which can fix to your flash. So it's very similar to a better beamer. The only advantage here is that the top and bottom are covered, so your flash power is not wasted, and the flash throw is further using this mega mod. Now, mega mod obviously will be a little bit expensive than the better beamer. So these are the equipments, flash equipments, which are used in various types of photography. I hope this has given you some good idea on how we can use flash in flash photography. Also, I would like to show you how to change the power and compensation. Now this flash is on TTL mode, and if you see these numbers, these are the compensation numbers. So from 0, I can go down to -3, and I can also go up to +3. This is the TTL mode. So this is the flash exposure compensation. Now, if the same was on a manual mode, then this is the flash power which we adjust. So the flash power, the maximum power, it can go up to 10, and the lowest power, it can go up to 2. So every drop from 2 to 3, every increase from 2 to 3, this is increase of one stop. So this is how you can increase the power or decrease the power of flash in manual mode, and this is how you can compensate for positive compensation or negative compensation in the TTL mode.
This video brings us to the end of our learning about flash. I hope that this lesson has been able to teach you about the various uses of the flash, the different types of flash, how to use them and when to use them. All these techniques are going to be very useful to you as you start exploring outdoor and indoor photography. As photojournalists, we are going to find ourselves many a times in situations where the existing light is not good enough and not sufficient, and we must use a flash to get a correctly exposed photograph. And at other times, we can use the flash artistically to make the photographs that we want. So get out there and start taking your photographs, trying to use the flash and exploring it.